and welcome to episode 2 of the Gold Country Media Sports Jam. I'm Jordan.
I'm Aaron.
And I'm Matt.
And we're here. Week 1 of the football season has kicked off, and we had some crazy games. A few games that I think we kind of expected the results of, a few that opened some eyes around everywhere. But first off, where's everyone joining us from? Aaron, Matt, I see. Are you guys at home? Are you guys in the office? Where are you guys at?
I am in my humble abode here in my dining room here at home, and hopefully the lighting's a little bit better than last week for you guys. So, yeah.
All right. What about you, Matt?
I'm just here at the Telegraph office. Awesome.
All right, cool. Well, Aaron, you're the only one from home because I'm here at the Auburn Journal office. I got a nice little mural of the courthouse behind me. So, we're getting kind of scenic here, I guess, shaking things up.
I wish I would have been able to keep the same background as last week. I have all the wonderful sports figurines my dad's collected for like decades now, but unfortunately the lighting didn't cooperate. But this will do.
Out of curiosity, what's the coolest one you have in that little background?
Well, honestly, we actually have a lot of music ones in there too, and there's a couple of Elvis ones up there that I like, and then there's some stuff from Yellow Submarine from the Beatles. I'm a classic person, I got into classic rock, and so we got some Beatles stuff, we got some Elvis stuff, we got sports stuff. There's everything in there.
I like it. Did you watch the Elvis movie yet?
I have not. I want to see it though. That is the one movie I have yet to see.
It's good. All right, well, let's get it started with some football. Who wants to kick things off, kind of recapping where you guys were at Friday night and what you saw?
I'll go ahead if that's cool. So I was at 12 Bridges' first ever varsity game in the history of their program. And going into the game, I predicted they would win by 6, and it looked like after the end of the first quarter that it was going to be a lot more than that, but they weren't able to hold on. They were up 21-0 early, and then they just started making mistakes. They had 5 personal fouls in the game, a lot of them being face masks. Defense didn't really get the job done in the second and third quarter. I will say that they are inexperienced, and they do have a lack of depth. There was only 26 guys that were in pads for the game, but that team was still able to pull it together in the fourth quarter. They had tons of heart, and their quarterback Whit Cruz was able to lead them on a 73-yard drive at the end of that game that culminated with a crazy catch by Jacob Baxley, where somehow on a fourth down play he was able to get his hands right under the ball before it hit the ground. Crazy catch. Nathan Crawford got the touchdown, and then they were down 35-34, and I've seen Coach Chris Bean do this before in his time at Lincoln. They decided to go for 2, and I was thinking first, man, that's a gutsy play, but they wanted to give the fans something to remember, and boy, did they. They went for 2. Crawford also got the 2-point conversion, and they sent those fans home happy. It was a wild week 1, but 12 Bridges at the end of the day was able to get the job done and give those fans a memory.
I like the move to go for 2. I think, it's a gutsy move, but it's one of those where it's like, hey, you know what? Lay it on the line. You win or you lose right here. Like, you don't, leave nothing up to doubt. Matt, you were at a good one this week. You were very high on Oak Ridge in our opening show, and they made you look like you know what you're talking about. What did you like from the Trojans this Friday?
Well, with all due respect, Consumer Stokes did not look that strong to me. So it was part Oak Ridge, part of Consumer Stokes. But Oak Ridge, they dominated from the start in all facets of the game. The defense, Consumer Stokes crossed midfield one time, I think, the whole game, maybe twice. So the defense shut them down, and offensively, Oak Ridge, they moved the ball both running and passing pretty equally. And then they had 8 or 9 different guys catch balls, and 5 or 6 other guys run balls. So they spread the ball around. They got a lot of people involved, and they had a good time. And they're, like I said last week, they're really excited to forget last season and move on. And it was a great start for them.
And I know Oak Ridge wasn't the only big story coming out of your area. Kind of an unfortunate story of what happened with Walker Lyons over in Folsom. Can you kind of talk a little bit about what you know about that situation?
Well, yeah, it was unfortunate. It was everywhere. I was down in Elk Grove and heard about it. So it's just like the news spread, and he, everyone likes Walker. I thought, talking to the coaches, he's friends with all his teammates. Their family's heavily involved in the program. He's got a younger brother on the freshman team. So he's a guy that, everyone likes and cares about. And he had surgery overnight Friday, and he walked out of the hospital on Saturday morning. And the surgery went well as you could be expected. And I reached out to him over the weekend. He got back to me, which I appreciated because, he didn't have to get back to me, but he did.
Yeah.
And, he just sent me a text message that he posted on his own social media account. But still, he's just very grateful and thankful for all the prayers and well wishes and all the stuff he's heard from people, and not just teammates, but, I guess the Folsom community. He's felt the love. So, I'm sure he'll be at their game on the sideline this week. And, things went, it's unfortunate, but the surgery went well and he's on the road to recovery.
That's good to hear. And, that is not going to be the last football that kid's playing. Obviously, he's committed to Stanford. I've heard he is talking about serving his mission after graduation, but either way, that's a huge pickup for the Cardinal whenever he is able to play again.
I was shocked. I saw a photo of that injury at the 12 Bridges game, and I was thinking, obviously people always compare stuff like that whenever they see a fracture to Joe Theismann, but it looked really bad. And I was thinking, he's done for the season. I hopefully that's not a compound fracture. And to hear that he was able to walk out on his own behalf of the hospital was shocking, to say the least. So I'm very happy to hear at least it's not as bad as we first thought.
Yeah, he said there's no ligament or tendons damage, and there's a clean break, so that's good. And so he's, this, if things went so well, he's even thinking, hey, if we make it to the state game, 90 days, I might be able to come back. So,
if Folsom didn't need any extra motivation, they've got some more right there now.
Yeah.
So,
hey, the one good thing, hey, Jordan, one other thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we were going to talk about this later, but no injury is good. But at least for the Bulldogs, tight end is a position where they have plenty of depth. Their number 2 tight end, if you will, Mason Norberg, he's got offers to 5 or 6 different schools too. So he's more than capable of filling in. And they have another junior, who Colin Gallagher, who the coaching staff's really high on. So they have some depth there. They'll be okay.
I've always had a running joke with Alabama football. My stepdad and I used to make this joke saying whenever a player got hurt, and they're like, oh, the backup's coming in. You're like, it's not the backup. That's just next year's starter. That's kind of the case for Folsom this year, too.
Sure.
Moving on to the Foothills, I was at another crazy game, Placer and Casa Roble. Last year, that game was 40-33, a back-and-forth game. I kind of predicted the same this year, and they made me look correct. Placer just marched down the field right away. Baylor Kelly, the sophomore running back, he had 219 yards, 3 touchdowns in the game. First touch of the game, he went for 35 yards. I actually talked to him after the game, and he was like, that instantly took the nerves off. But spoken like a true running back, every question I asked him, the answer was the same. He has said, I couldn't do this without my offensive line. I couldn't do this without my offensive line. Probably helps that his dad's the offensive line coach at Placer. But it's spoken like a true running back. Sophomore kid, knows to think his offensive line, knows what he's talking about. But anyway, they're just these teams going back and forth all game, just going blow for blow. And it wasn't, marching down the field as much. Placer was a little bit, but a lot of it was just big play after big play. Cole Owens had a huge game. It was, I believe, Elijah Huddle, sophomore receiver for Casa Roble, had 2 receptions, 118 yards, 2 touchdowns. So didn't touch the ball a lot, but when he did, it went for big plays. I think he had like a 40 or 50 yard kick return as well. But anyway, so Placer ends up missing a field extra point in the fourth quarter, 34-28. Casa Roble comes down and scores. Then Placer marches down the field almost too fast, but Casa Roble kind of makes a goal line stand, but they had to burn all their timeouts. And Placer goes, kicks a field goal, makes it 37-35 with a little less than a minute and a half left. And Isaiah Hanley gets his second interception of the night to get the game winner for Placer. Huge win for them. And just a real tone setter. I was talking to Joey Montoya after the game, and he kind of said, one thing, the biggest shame is that someone had to lose that game. Neither team deserved to lose it. But the way last year started for the Hillmen of starting 0-5 and losing 5 one-possession games, I think it was, or something crazy like that. Maybe I think Vista Del Lago was a 10-point game, but either way, it was one of those where Vista kind of put it away at the end. Starting out with another game like that, but on the winning foot, I mean, that can do wonders for momentum for your season. And I think that's a huge tone setter for Placer this year. And kind of talking about some of the other games in the foothills, before I, throw it back to you guys for where you were. Colfax was a little bit of a surprise. I did think that Truckee was going to win that game. I didn't think that they were going to take it the way they did. They beat Colfax 30-6. Modesto Christian took it to Forest Hill as well. That was 47-20. I was a little surprised by that. But Bear River pulled out a win over Division I Kennedy. That was huge. Tyler Hoosdeveld, I believe it is, 3 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles. So defensive power there, but big win for Bear River. Matt, what did the rest of your teams do over in the Folsom area?
Well, Folsom, went on to beat Monterey Trail 47-18, and it was a solid victory. Folsom's expectations are so high; everyone thinks they should win every game by 50 points. But I mean, this game was never in doubt. Vista went down to Manteca and just got pummeled by last year's D3 champs, 44-6. Manteca returned the opening kickoff for a score, and it was all downhill after that. Vista they turned the ball over 4 times, and they did shut them out in the second half, which they were, when you're looking for a positive, say, they'll take it. So they struggled, but that was a tough game, and they knew it was going to be tough. I'm sure they wish they would have shown a little bit better, though.
Yeah, I mean, Vista's a team that's going to be battle tested, and we know how good that Manteca team is and how good their running game is, but I don't think after, everyone makes these knee-jerk reactions after week 1. I don't think anyone's going to have any doubts that Vista is going to be a player in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I mean, they'll be back. And obviously not every team is as tough as Manteca. But that said, I think this week 2 is pretty important to them. I mean, they want to get back on track and look like the Eagles of old. And they didn't run the ball at all. They could run the ball against Manteca. They're going to have to. They only average 2 yards per carry. And that's not Vista football. So they're going to get back to run the ball.
That makes sense. And Aaron, kind of back to you. I know you've got a lot of schools to cover. If you don't have, all the final scores, totally get that, or you don't have time to go through them. But what were maybe a couple final scores that you saw that stood out to you this week from South Placer?
Yeah, so scores from the area, there were some that were surprises, some that weren't surprises to me. The first one I want to mention is the Rockland game. They lost to Turlock 14-7, and I rated Rockland pretty high going into the season, and I had them runner-up in the SFL. Matt, I know you had them down a little bit, and you're looking a lot better than me right now because, they're down there, arguably their biggest or one of their biggest players in Derek Houston right now, who's down with injury, and I think that hurt them a little bit in the game. But one thing that I think I noticed last year when I was at that Folsom Rockland game is when Rockland's down, like Joey, the quarterback, Joey Roberts, he's got to find a way to carry that team to success. And that didn't happen this week. I'm interested to see how they're going to respond this week when it comes to playing McQueen. That's a very talented program up in Reno. For anybody that doesn't know, that's where Brandon Ayuk of the 49ers went. And they're going to have to really turn things around quick if they really want to stay ranked highly in the section and make a statement. So I was a little bit surprised by that one. Lincoln wasn't too surprised.
I believe McQueen's a state runner-up in Nevada last year.
Yes.
I don't know who won. I'm assuming Bishop Gorman won. I actually don't know if Bishop Gorman won last year. But
I just know they were runner-up, yeah.
McQueen's solid.
I wasn't too surprised by Lincoln rolling over River City 49-12. Another surprise to me was Whitney. Jacob Smiley, who was the starter, and I talked to Coach McNally. He didn't really know who was going to be the starter between Smiley and Hargis, even with like a week and a half to go with the season. And they went with Smiley, and Smiley went down with injury early in that game. And Hargis came in, and he played very well. But I think the credit, and I'll get into this a little bit more later, goes to Isaiah Bickham, the running back, who got 2 touchdowns in that game. And they were able to pull it out. I didn't think Antelope was going to lose a game until the playoffs. Really, I thought they were going to be one of the top teams in Division II, one of the top teams in section, and Whitney was able to avenge their playoff loss and win 35-28. That was a huge statement that they made, and I'm interested to see how they keep it going. A couple other things: Valley Christian Academy, small school D7, they got a win against Mira Loma to start the season. I know they got that last season, but just from looking at some of the highlights and looking at how the game went, I'm definitely impressed by how they performed. And I'm interested to see how they're able to keep things going. Wood Creek got a big win against Franklin, 43-13. And so Whitney and Wood Creek play this week, and that's a game that I'm really intrigued to see how it goes. So one final score I'll throw out there before we go on to the next thing is West Park put up a 70 against Laguna Creek, 70-40. Now, regardless, how good or bad Laguna Creek's defense is and how good West Park's offense is, whenever you put up 70 points, that's darn sure impressive. Weston Wade, their running back, had 3 touchdowns on 6 carries. DeVell Barksdale, the quarterback, had 5 passing touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. I'm telling you, man, the Panthers are a force to be reckoned with. They are not a team to be ignored this season by anybody. They are going to ground and pound teams all year and make it very hard. And it's very interesting to see in their first season with seniors.
Yeah, I agree. I think West Park opened some eyes with that score. And like I said, you can go either way with it, where it's like, well, you scored 70, but you gave up 40. But I mean, 70 points, 70 points. And that's a huge one. Aaron, did you have like a performance or an athlete of the week that kind of stood out to you this year or this week?
Yeah. It was tough because I was debating on going with Barksdale because, he had 6 total touchdowns in that game. And, whenever you see a player get 6 touchdowns, that's huge. And so I almost went with him, but I had to give it to Isaiah Bickham. Whenever a player goes down in a game like that, that's that important, and you're able to basically bring that team back, because he had 2 touchdowns. The team was down 21-0 early, and he had 2 rushing touchdowns to help get that team back into the game. I believe it was a 1-score game at halftime, or it may have even been tied, and then they were able to pull away. I think that he had such a big impact on that game. I know Hargis played well, and he had that game-winning touchdown pass to Lincoln Pfeiffer, but I have to go Isaiah Bickham, 10 carries for 106 yards and 2 touchdowns to bring Whitney back into the game and really make a statement that they may be a team to pay attention to this season.
I like it. Matt, what about you? Is there kind of an athlete of the week or a player that stood out to you this week?
Well, I wasn't at this game, but Oak Ridge was so dominant, and I was at the Oak Ridge game, but I mean, they didn't really have a player that was their stats were all kind of even. They didn't have a standout performer. Everyone did well. But when I talked to Coach Daugherty at Folsom, Austin Mack, he needed confidence. This is his first start as a junior, and he was 20 out of 26 or 342 and 5. So that's a good start for him. After last year, his play against Rockland, in the games as a sophomore, he didn't look that good, quite honestly. But this was a good start for him and something for him to build on. So I'm going with him.
All right, I like it. I had a tough one. I know I mentioned Baylor Kelly running for 219 yards. Roosevelt on Bear River with 3 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles. Del Oro had Brandon Hill and Robert Garcia both getting defensive touchdowns. But I'm going to pander to the big boys here. My athlete of the week is actually going to be Colin Bray of Placer. Bray had 1.5 sacks against Casa Roble, including a big one on the final drive of the game where him and Mason Yoakum kind of paired to sack the Casa Roble quarterback on, and then the next play actually ended up being the game-winning interception. But the offensive lineman Placer was running behind for 341 rushing yards. Placer averaged 8.31 yards per carry, and he was a huge part of that. So, give the big boys some love. Colin Bray, congratulations. You're our athlete of the week for this one. And, opening weekend, everyone makes some knee-jerk reactions, and, there are a lot of mistakes that are made, stuff like that. It's hard. You kind of take some results with a grain of salt, but I do think we do learn a lot about these teams on opening weekend, especially the teams that are question marks. I know for me, a couple things that I learned. One thing was that Placer is every bit as that they were advertised. We knew they were young. We knew they were athletic, and we are just kind of like, where's that experience going to play out? They're going to be a problem in the D3, D4 field. They have got weapons out the wazoo. They can attack with the run. They can attack with the pass. The defensive front can be a problem. And Isaiah Hanley, we were told, is the most athletic kid in the school. He showed that. He had 2 interceptions. He made an incredible diving catch. That was a 40-yard reception. He was leaping over players. I mean, this kid is insane. And, the score was 37-35. Placer had a pick six. It was called back on a questionable roughing the passer call. They had a kick return for a touchdown that was called back due to a hold. They turned the ball over 3 times in scoring position. So the score was 37-35, but it was close. It could have been a West Park type score where Placer could have put up, 50, 60 on him. Another one that stood out that I learned is Del Oro's defense is legit. They shut Inderkum down in that one. The running game had a little tough time getting started with Asia and Murray. Caden Pinnock did a good job. He took over. Hamilton got the ball. He started the first 2 series, but Pinnock kind of took over for the other 2, or for the rest of the game until the fourth quarter when Hamilton came back in. And Del Oro's defense, though, was the story of that game. They shut Inderkum down 35-8. Inderkum's only touchdown of the game, I think, came pretty late in it, like 5 minutes left to go. So while the SFL is tough, I think Del Oro is going to be just fine this year. Matt, what were some things you learned this year or this week?
Well, again, I just go back to Mac. I mean, that was, everyone's kind of all eyes are on him. And as good as he plays, the quarterback's going to take Folsom as far as they're going to go. So that was a great start for him. He's got to feel good about it. But what Coach Doherty said is, hey, we got to keep getting better. This is only 1 week. And, he used gave me a good quote. He goes, let's not confuse results with execution. He goes, just because he's got good numbers, I'm not picking on Austin Mack, but he was just saying in general, there's room for improvement is what he's the point he's trying to make. So, but it was a great start for Austin Mack. And if he keeps along that progression, I mean, Folsom will be fine. In Oak Ridge, here's another thing. Their special teams, their kickers. I mean, Alex Tensley does the kickoff, and at least half his kicks went in the end zone. So they can neutralize teams with good return games. And then their field goal kicker, Carson Nichols, he missed 2 field goals, but they were both over 40 yards, and they were both long enough to be good. They were just, one was wide right, and the other one just missed by about 2 or 3 feet. So Oak Ridge has good special teams that could win them some games this year.
Hey, you know what everyone says? Special teams a third of the game. I mean, gets overlooked a lot of times, but you make a big play on special teams, that can be a tone setter for the whole game.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron, what about you? What are a few things you learned?
So first off, I learned Lincoln has more weapons on offense than I thought. In that 49-12 win against River City, again, River City, not one of the best teams in the section, but still they had 5 different players that scored, not even including Mook, the quarterback. Hanning got his 2 touchdowns, which was expected. Sean Cotton got a touchdown. I expect him to be a good player on both sides of the ball this year for Lincoln. But also Michael Dallas gets in. He scores a rushing touchdown. And then not only does Mukai pass one to Faria, but he also passes one to Hayden Dotson. That's a player I actually didn't even know about really until I saw his name on the score sheet this week. So, if Lincoln is able to keep these weapons firing, I think they'll be a good force to be reckoned with going forward too. They're going to have a really good test at it on Friday against Yuba City to see if they can keep that going. Another thing, and this is kind of outside of it, along with the Placer Roseville game. I know you're going to be going to a game on Thursday, Jordan, for Del Oro. And I posted this on Facebook and Twitter yesterday. I feel bad for all these coaches and the players and the parents because it's probably not as convenient for them. Plus, they have shortened weeks, which doesn't exactly make it as easy when it comes to practice. But I will say, from the reporter side of me, even though it might be a little bit of a selfish point, I'm very happy that I'm able to get out and cover more games. But at the same time, I'm interested in that extra day. So that's something I think that we're going to be seeing all season long, unfortunately. And hopefully teams are able to adapt to it and prepare for it relatively quickly. But yeah, I think
Out there is a Vistas game against Ponderosa Thursday as well. They moved that one.
That's right. Yeah, I heard that one got moved as well. Yep.
All right, so we're all going to be getting 2 games next week. So kind of on that note, let's kind of give some predictions. Who wants to start with, let's say, where you'll be Thursday, where you'll be Friday, and what you're expecting out of those games?
I can go ahead. So I am actually between 2 games on Thursday. I'm either going to be at Placer Roseville or I'll be at Whitney Wood Creek. Placer Roseville is definitely an intriguing matchup. I haven't really had much of a chance to talk about Roseville yet. They defeated Oakmont 49-0. I know Oakmont's in a bit of a rebuilding year, but still putting up 49 any week, as we mentioned when it came to the whole West Park game, is very impressive. It's obviously going to be a much bigger test for them. This actually is about Placer was supposed to travel down to Roseville and they were going to play down there. But if I'm not mistaken, I believe that game got canceled due to smoke. And so this year they're actually going to get a chance to play each other. And I'm really interested to see if Roseville's able to limit Baylor Kelly to no more than 2 touchdowns, how Brandon Graydon's going to be able to play. I do think the Hillman will pull away late in that game, and I think Placer takes it 34-24. Whitney Wood Creek, I think that could honestly be a closer game than some may expect. Again, Wood Creek put up 43 last week, 43-13 in that one. I'm going to take Whitney, but I think it'll be a closer game than many expect. I'm going to say 27-20 Whitney. And then Friday, I'll say it right now, half of the games I'm basically going to be at Lincoln on Fridays because I'm actually the public address announcer over there as well. But even if I wasn't the PA announcer, I would be at the game on Friday because Yuba City Lincoln, another one-year story, they were supposed to play last year, and that game got canceled due to smoke. This season, it should be very exciting as well. Nick Afado of Yuba City played really well week 1, and they proved that they're no joke putting Let's go 28-23 Yuba City.
All right, Matt, what about you? Where are you going to be? One, we know where you're going to be Thursday. Where are you going to be, I guess, Friday? And what do you expect about both those games?
Yeah, I'll be at Vista Thursday for their home opener against Ponderosa. Vista has high expectations this year, and after last week, Hunter Williams, their linebacker, told me that he said it's going to be a tough week for Ponderosa. So he's fired up already to go, but up last week. So I think they'll out of it look like themselves this week. And I'm going 35-14 over Ponderosa. And Friday night, I'll be at Folsom. They host Sarah, who lost the Open Division state championship game last year to Monterey. So obviously they had a good team last year, and I don't know much about their personnel coming back, but I mean, you got to figure Coach Daugherty said they're a top 5 NorCal team, so they're going to be tough. And Daugherty, he doesn't put a positive vibe with me when he talks about opponents and whatnot. But I'm picking the Bulldogs 35-24.
All right, I like it. Starting out my week Thursday night, I'm going to be at Del Oro Del Campo. I mean, to be frank, I think I don't see a world where Del Campo's front 7 can really stop Del Oro's ground game. I mean, they rolled through Wintercom. I think they're going to keep it rolling. Del Campo running back, Nos Jones. I mean, he ran for over 100 yards Friday night. He did get 24 touches. He could be a problem, but I think Del Oro's line and their defense is just going to be too much. I see Del Oro winning this one 42-6. I think Del Oro's just going to jump on him early and stay on him. Del Oro won that one last year in Carmichael, and I think they're going to get the same. Friday night, I think it's going to be a much closer game. I'm actually going to be at Colfax Woodland over in Woodland, where the Falcons are looking to avenge 2 losses to the Wolves last year, including the one that knocked them out of the playoffs. River Roach, that was a game where, he had 3 varsity practices, and he was thrown in to be the starter in the playoff game as a sophomore because the Colfax starting quarterback, Noah Souza, got hurt. Colfax had a tough night in Truckee. It was 30-6, but if you look at the stats from that game, I think the score was a little more lopsided than the game was. Colfax did turn the ball over. They had 4 interceptions, and that was kind of the glaring issue, but Truckee had about 300-something yards of total offense, I believe. A lot of their yards came on interception returns and good kick returns. And, I mean, you know, like we said, defense and like special teams is a third of the game. You got to cover it. But I think the Colfax defense kind of held its own. They were doing their job. They just were kind of fighting an uphill battle with field position all night. Woodland lost a lot of talent from last year's team. I think Colfax has a lot of talent still. Woodland also lost to Marysville on opening night. I think Colfax is going to be hungry for revenge in this one. I think they're going to get their first win of the season. I've got Colfax winning that 24-17. So we've got some good games this coming Friday, some good stuff. We've also got volleyball starting up. I believe next week is kind of when it really starts up. So next week we'll kind of get into some more stuff like that. But is there anything else you guys want to add before we wrap this thing up?
I'm just going to add that Oak Ridge has a home game against Vacaville, and that's a game that the team that Oak Ridge lost to last year near the very end of the game. So I know they're hungry to get revenge on them too. So, and Coach Taylor wants to be 2-0 heading into their bye week, so it's a big game for them.
Oh yeah, and Taylor doesn't back down from anyone. I think Oak Ridge is going to be, you're going to be used to seeing some of these Vacaville, some of these big games on it, and soon we're probably going to start seeing some big names from SoCal or other states if it's a Casey Taylor schedule.
Well, they're playing Silverton in a week or two, and they're Oregon State champs from last year, so he's got some tough games.
All right.
I didn't get a chance to talk much about Granite Bay. They had a big win week 1 against Elk Grove, 34-12. They're playing Davis again. I'm expecting them to get another win. I think the Grizzlies will be really good this year. I think they proved week 1 that they're going to be a really tough team to beat, and their offense, led by their run game, is going to be tough to stop. I'm expecting them to get another win this week, which should set up for a very interesting week 3 against Vista Del Lago, provided Vista is able to respond back this week.
I think that's going to be a big one too. And honestly, on one end too, I think the biggest thing to look for with a lot of these teams that maybe had a week 1 we didn't expect is how they're going to respond in the next game. I know a lot of people, I've seen some talk on Twitter. A lot of people are saying how Rockland plays against McQueen is going to be a huge thing. I think that's the case for Forest Hill. They had a tough game against Modesto Christian. They're playing another bigger opponent than Mesa Verde, but even though Mesa Verde is a D4 playing a D7, it's a winnable game for Forest Hill. It's their home opener. It's going to be interesting to see how the Wildfires respond. I mean, it's a young team. They've got some experience, and a lot of growing up is how you respond. It's like Mike Tyson says, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Forest Hill just got punched in the mouth. What's your plan? How are you going to respond to that? I think that's going to be a huge thing. And like you said, Matt, depends on how Vista responds. So we've got a few teams we are looking to see build some momentum, a few teams to see how they respond to losses. I think that should just about do it for this week's episode of the Sports Jam. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm Jordan.
I'm Aaron.
I'm Matt.
Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week.